exists. So today's topic, meaningful versus a happy life. This particular topic was something which just started off with an email that was sent to me. So I thought, okay, this is it was an interesting article. I'll read the article first, and then we'll go into a bit of the Buddhist teaching, and then see where that takes us. I don't necessarily have a big pre-planned talk. I have the topics, and we just see how that unfolds. So I'll start the talk now in regards to what is the meaningful versus the happy life. And let's see how we go. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Well, for those of you who are not familiar with Pali, that means homage to the Blessed One, the Worthy One, the Fully Awakened One. So I might start off first with the article. And this particular article is from a newspaper called The Atlantic. So the headline for it. The actual author of this is Emily Eshahani Smith from The Atlantic, and this was written in October 22nd, 2014. And so there's the title for this particular one is I got from a Business Insider newspaper or magazine, it depends what you want to call it, it was online. A psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust explains why meaningfulness matters more than happiness. So let's make a start. It is the very pursuit of happiness that thwarts happiness. In September 1942, Viktor Frankl, a prominent Jewish psychiatrist and neurologist, was in Vienna and was arrested and transported to a Nazi concentration camp with his wife and parents. 3 years later, when his camp was liberated, most of his family, including his pregnant wife, had perished. But he, prisoner number 119104, had survived. In his best-selling 1946 book, Man's Search for Meaning, which he wrote in 9 days about his experiences in the camps, Frankl concluded that the difference between those who had lived and those who had died came down to one thing, meaning, an insight he came to early in life. When he was a high school student, one of his science teachers declared to the class, "Life is nothing more than a combustion process, a process of oxidation." Frankl jumped out of his chair and responded, "Sir, if this is so, then what can be the meaning of life?" As he saw in the camps, those who found meaning, even in the most horrendous circumstances, were far more resilient to suffering than those who did not. Everything can be taken away from a man, but one thing, Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning. The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Frankl worked as a therapist in the camps, and in his book he gives the example of 2 suicidal inmates he encountered there. Like many others in the camps, these 2 men were hopeless and thought that there was nothing more to expect from life, nothing to live for. In both cases, Frankl writes, it was a question of getting them to realize that life was still expecting something from them. Something in the future was expected of them. For one man, it was his young child, who was then living in a foreign country. For the other, a scientist, it was a series of books that he needed to finish. Frankl writes, this uniqueness and singleness which distinguishes each individual and gives a meaning to his existence has a bearing on creative work as much as it does on human love. When the impossibility of replacing a person is realized, it allows the responsibility which a man has for his existence and its continuance to appear in all its magnitude. A man who becomes conscious of the responsibility he bears toward a human being who affectionately waits for him or to an unfinished work will never be able to throw away his life. He knows the why for his existence and will be able to bear almost any how. In 1991, the Library of Congress and Book of the Month Club listed Man's Search for Meaning as one of the 10 most influential books in the United States. It has sold millions of copies worldwide. Now, over 20 years later, the book's ethos, its emphasis on meaning, the value of suffering and responsibility to something greater than the self, seems to be at odds with our culture, which is more interested in the pursuit of individual happiness than in the search for meaning. To the European, Frankl wrote, it is a characteristic of the American culture that, again and again, one is commanded and ordered to be happy. But happiness cannot be pursued. It must ensue. One must have a reason to be happy. Even though American happiness levels are at 4-year high, 4 out of 10 Americans have not discovered a satisfying life purpose. According to Gallup, the happiness levels of Americans are at a 4-year high, as it seems the number of best-selling books with the word happiness in their titles. As of January 2013, Gallup also reports that nearly 60% of all Americans today feel happy without a lot of stress or worry. On the other hand, according to the Centre for Disease Control, about 4 out of 10 Americans have not discovered a satisfying life purpose. 40% either do not think that their lives have a clear sense of purpose or are neutral about whether their lives have purpose. Nearly a quarter of Americans feel neutral or do not have a strong sense of what makes their lives meaningful. Research has shown that having purpose and meaning in life increases overall well-being and life satisfaction, improves mental and physical health, enhances resiliency, enhances self-esteem, and decreases the chances of depression. On top of that, the single-minded pursuit of happiness is ironically leaving people less happy, according to the recent research. It is the very pursuit of happiness, Frankl knew, that thwarts happiness. And this is why some researchers are cautioning against the pursuit of mere happiness. In a new study which will be published this year, in a forthcoming issue of the Journal of Positive Psychology, psychological scientists asked nearly 400 Americans aged 18 to 78 whether they thought that their lives were meaningful and or happy. Examining their self-reported attitudes towards meaning, happiness and many other variables like stress levels, spending patterns and having children over a month-long period, the researchers found that a meaningful life and a happy life overlap in certain ways but are ultimately very different. Leading a happy life, the psychologists found, is associated with being a taker, while leading a meaningful life corresponds with being a giver. Happiness without meaning characterizes a relatively shallow, self-absorbed or even selfish life, in which things go well, needs and desires are easily satisfied, and difficult or taxing entanglements are avoided, the authors write. How do the happy life and meaningful life differ? Happiness, they found, is about feeling good. Specifically, the researchers found that people who are happy tend to think that life is easy. They are in good physical health and they are able to buy the things that they need and want. While not having enough money decreases how happy and meaningful you consider your life to be, it has a much greater impact on happiness. The happy life is also defined by a lack of stress or worry. Most importantly, from a social perspective, the pursuit of happiness is associated with selfish behaviour, being, as mentioned, a taker rather than a giver. The pursuit of happiness is associated with selfish behaviour, being, as mentioned, a taker rather than the giver, and the psychologists give an evolutionary explanation for this. Happiness is about drive reduction. If you have a need or a desire like hunger, you satisfy it and that makes you happy. People become happy, in other words, when they get what they want. Humans, then, are not the only ones who can feel happy. Animals have needs and drives too, and when those drives are satisfied, animals also feel happy, the researchers have pointed out. Happy people get a lot of joy from receiving benefits from others, while people leading meaningful lives get a lot of joy from giving to others. explained Kathleen Vose, one of the authors of the study, in a recent presentation at the University of Pennsylvania. In other words, meaning transcends the self, while happiness is all about giving the self what it wants. People who have high meaning in their lives are more likely to help others in need. If anything, pure happiness is linked to not helping others in need, the researchers, which include Stanford University's Jennifer Aker and Emily Gabinski, write. What sets human beings apart from animals is not the pursuit of happiness, which occurs all across the natural world, but the pursuit of meaning, which is unique to humans, according to Roy Baumeister, the lead researcher in the study and author with John Tierney of the recent book Willpower, Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength. Baumeister, a social psychologist at Florida State University, was named an ISI highly cited scientific researcher in 2003. The study participants reported deriving meaning from giving a part of themselves away to others and making a sacrifice on behalf of the overall group. In the words of Martin E.P. Seligman, one of the leading psychological scientists alive today, in the meaningful life, you use your highest strengths and talents to belong to and serve something you believe is larger than the self. For instance, having more meaning in one's life was associated with activities like buying presents for others, taking care of kids, and arguing. People whose lives have high levels of meaning often actively seek meaning out even when they will know it comes to the expense of happiness. Because they have invested themselves in something bigger than themselves, they also worry more and have higher levels of stress and anxiety in their lives than happy people. Having children, for example, is associated with the meaningful life and requires self-sacrifice, but it has been famously associated with low happiness among parents, including the ones in this study. In fact, according to Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert, research shows that parents are less happy interacting with their children than they are exercising, eating, and watching television. Partly what we do as human beings is to take care of others and contribute to others. This makes life meaningful, but it does not necessarily make us happy, Baumeister told me in an interview. Meaning is not only about transcending the self, but also about transcending the present moment, which is perhaps the most important finding of the study, according to the researchers. Whilst happiness is an emotion felt in the here and now, it ultimately fades, just as all emotions do. Positive affect and feelings of pleasure are fleeting. The amount of time people report feeling good or bad correlates with happiness, but not at all with meaning. Meaning, on the other hand, is enduring. It connects the past to the present to the future. Thinking beyond the present moment into the past or future was a sign of the relatively meaningful but unhappy life, the researchers write. Happiness is not generally found in contemplating the past or the future. That is, people who thought more about the present were happier, but people who spent more time thinking about the future or about past struggles and sufferings felt more meaning in their lives, though they were less happy. Having negative events happen to you, the study found, decreases your happiness but increases the amount of meaning you have in life. Having negative events happen to you, the study found, decreases your happiness but increases the amount of meaning you have in your life. Another study from 2011 confirmed this, finding that people who have meaning in their lives in the form of a clearly defined purpose rate their satisfaction with life higher even when they were feeling bad than those who did not have a clearly defined purpose. If there is meaning in life at all, Frankl wrote, then there must be meaning in suffering. Which brings us back to Frankl's life, and specifically a decisive experience he had before he was sent to the concentration camps. It was an incident that emphasizes the difference between the pursuit of meaning and the pursuit of happiness in life. In his early adulthood, before he and his family were taken away to the camps, Frankl had established himself as one of the leading psychiatrists in Vienna and the world. As a 16-year-old boy, for example, he struck up a correspondence with Sigmund Freud, and one day sent Freud a 2-page paper he had written. Freud, impressed by Frankl's talent, sent the paper to International Journal of Psychoanalysis for publication. I hope you don't object, Freud wrote the teenager. While he was in medical school, Frankl distinguished himself even further. Not only did he establish suicide prevention centres for teenagers, a precursor to his work in the camps, but he was also developing his signature contribution to the field of clinical psychology, logotherapy, which is meant to help people overcome depression and achieve well-being by finding their unique meaning in life. By 1941, his theories had received international attention and he was working as the chief of neurology at Vienna's Rothschild Hospital, where he risked his life and career by making false diagnoses of mentally ill patients so they would not, per Nazi orders, be euthanized. That was the same year when he had a decision to make, a decision that would change his life. With his career on the rise and the threat of Nazis looming over him, Frankl had applied for a visa to America, which he was granted in 1941. By then the Nazis had already started rounding up the Jews and taking them away to concentration camps, focusing on the elderly first. Frankl knew that it would only be time before the Nazis came to take his parents away. He also knew that once they did, he had a responsibility to be there with his parents to help them through the trauma of adjusting to camp life. On the other hand, as a newly married man with his visa in hand, he was tempted to leave for America and flee to safety, where he could distinguish himself even further in his field. As Anna S. Redsand recounts in her biography of Frankl, he was at a loss for what to do, so he set out for St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna to clear his head. Listening to the organ music, he repeatedly asked himself, should I leave my parents behind? Should I say goodbye and leave them to their fate? Where did his responsibility lie? He was looking for a hint from heaven. When he returned home, he found it. A piece of marble was lying on the table. His father explained that it was from the rubble of one of the nearby synagogues that the Nazis had destroyed. The marble contained the fragment of one of the 10 Commandments, the one about honouring your father and your mother. With that, Frankl decided to stay in Vienna and forego whatever opportunities for safety and career advancement awaited him in the United States. He decided to put aside his individual pursuits to serve his family and, later, other inmates in the camps. The wisdom that Frankl derived from his experience there in the middle of unimaginable human suffering is just as relevant now as it was then. Being human always points and is directed to something or someone other than oneself, being a meaning to fulfill or another human being to encounter. The more one forgets himself by giving himself to a cause to serve or another person to love, the more human he is. Baumeister and his colleagues would agree that the pursuit of meaning is what makes human beings uniquely human. By putting aside our selfish interests to serve someone or something larger than ourselves, by devoting our lives to giving rather than taking, we are not only expressing our fundamental humanity, but are also acknowledging that there is more to the good life than the pursuit of simple happiness. Okay, that's the end of that article from The Atlantic. I think there's a lot of Dhamma in there. I'll now start on the Buddha's speech. Okay, so that was a newspaper article about a psychiatrist, Frankl. And so now I should go on to a sutta, a teaching of the Buddha, to try and help reinforce some aspects of that article. So this one is from the Anguttara Nikaya. It's called Worthy Deeds. It's number 61, sutta number 61 from the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Fours. Then the householder Anantapindika approached the Blessed One. The Blessed One said to him, Householder, there are these 4 things which are wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. What 4? One thinks, may wealth come to me righteously. This is the first thing in the world that is wished for and rarely gained in the world. Having gained wealth righteously, one thinks, may fame come to me and to my relatives and preceptors. This is the second thing which is rarely gained in the world. Having gained wealth righteously and having gained fame for oneself and for one's relatives and preceptors, one thinks, may I live long and enjoy a long lifespan. This is the third thing rarely gained in the world. Having gained wealth righteously, having gained fame for oneself and one's relatives and preceptors, living long and enjoying a long lifespan, one thinks, with the breakup of the body after death, may I be reborn in a good destination in the heavenly world. This is the fourth thing rarely gained in the world. These are the four things that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. There are, householder, four other things that lead to obtaining those four things. What for? Accomplishment in faith, accomplishment in virtuous behaviour, accomplishment in generosity, and accomplishment in wisdom. And what, householder, is accomplishment in faith? Here a noble disciple is endowed with faith, places faith in the enlightenment of the Tathagata thus: the Blessed One is an Arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate, knower of the world, unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans, the enlightened one, the Blessed One. This is called accomplishment in faith. And what is accomplishment in virtuous behaviour? Here a noble disciple abstains from destruction of life, abstains from liquor, wine and intoxicants, the basis of heedlessness. This is called accomplishment in virtuous behaviour. And what is accomplishment in generosity? Here a noble disciple dwells at home with a mind free from the stain of miserliness, freely generous, open-handed, delighting in relinquishment, devoted to charity, delighting in giving and sharing. This is called accomplishment in generosity. And what is accomplishment in wisdom? If one dwells with a heart overcome by longing and unrighteous greed, one does what should be avoided and neglects one's duty, so that one's fame and happiness are spoiled. If one dwells with a heart overcome by ill will, by dullness and drowsiness, by restlessness and remorse, by doubt, one does what should be avoided and neglects one's duty, so that one's fame and happiness are spoiled. When, householder, a noble disciple has understood thus, longing and unrighteous greed are a defilement of the mind, he abandons them. When he understands thus, ill will is a defilement of the mind, he abandons it. When he has understood thus, dullness and drowsiness are a defilement of the mind, he abandons them. When he has understood thus, restlessness and remorse are a defilement of the mind, he abandons them. When he has understood thus, doubt is a defilement of the mind, he abandons it. When, householder, a noble disciple has understood thus, longing and unrighteous greed are a defilement of the mind and has abandoned them, when he has understood ill will, dullness and drowsiness, restlessness and remorse, doubt are a defilement of the mind and has abandoned them, he is then called a noble disciple of great wisdom, of wide wisdom, one who sees the range of things, one accomplished in wisdom. This is called the accomplishment in wisdom. There are these four other things that lead to obtaining the four things that are wished for, desired, agreeable, and rarely gained in the world. With wealth acquired by energetic striving, amassed by the strength of his arms, earned by the sweat of his brow, righteous wealth, righteously gained, the noble disciple undertakes four worthy deeds. What for? Here, householder, with wealth acquired by energetic striving, righteously gained, the noble disciple makes himself happy and pleased and properly maintains himself in happiness. He makes his parents happy and pleased and properly maintains them in happiness. He makes his wife and children, slaves, workers and servants happy and pleased and properly maintains them in happiness. He makes his friends and companions happy and pleased and properly maintains them in happiness. This is the first case of wealth that has gone to good use, that has been properly utilized and used for a worthy cause. Again, with wealth acquired by energetic striving, righteously gained, the noble disciple makes provisions against the losses that might arise from fire, floods, kings, thieves, or displeasing heirs. He makes himself secure against them. This is the second case of wealth that has gone to good use for a worthy cause. Again, with wealth acquired by energetic striving, righteously gained, the noble disciple makes the 5 oblations to relatives, guests, ancestors, the king and the deities. This is the third case of wealth that has gone for good use for a worthy cause. Again, with wealth acquired by energetic striving, righteously gained, the noble disciple establishes an uplifting offering of alms, an offering that is heavenly, resulting in happiness, conducive to heaven, to those ascetics and Brahmins who refrain from intoxication and heedlessness, who are settled in patience and mildness, who tame themselves, calm themselves, and train themselves for Nibbana. This is the fourth case of wealth gone to good use that has been properly employed and used for a worthy cause. These, householder, are the four worthy deeds that the noble disciple undertakes with wealth acquired by energetic striving, amassed by the strength of his arms, earned by the sweat of his brow, righteous wealth, righteously gained. And when anyone exhausts wealth on anything apart from these four worthy deeds, that wealth is said to have gone to waste, to have been squandered, to have been used frivolously. But when anyone exhausts wealth on these four worthy deeds, that wealth is said to have gone to good use, to have been properly used, to have been utilized for a worthy cause. Now there's some poetry at the end of this, but unlikely to be the Buddha's speech, so I won't worry about it too much. It just reinforces what's actually in that section there. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Right. It's interesting when we look at the link between happiness and meaningfulness in life. The reason for that first article was that it actually inspires that thought, that experiment to have, and that is meaningfulness and happiness the same thing? What is the distinction and the difference between the two? And it's relatively easy to be happy because all you need to do is be self-centered. Happiness can be quite easy, right? The conflict comes when we are trying to find meaning and happiness, because there's a dependency between these two. There's actually a relationship. One has to come before the other. If you want to have a happy life devoid of meaning, that is relatively easy. You just satisfy and serve yourself. In other words, just be selfish. Not wisely selfish, because being wisely selfish, you do need to be wisely selfish. You need to take care of your body. You need to eat or else you'll die. I'm not going to bath you. You need to bath yourself, right? You need to do these things for yourself. You need to take care of yourself. This is called being wisely selfish, right? But then there's the selfishness which has the bad connotation that people often go on about. That's being self-centered, okay? And self-centeredness is a poison. Yes, it will lead to happiness, okay? Immediacy of your sense-based pleasures, what you see, taste, touch, smell, imagine. These kinds of five senses that we're used to, plus the sixth sense in Buddhism and the Buddha's teaching, is the mind. So the things that you like to imagine and dream about can also be satisfying to a certain extent. But typically this is the kinds of things that we pursue, and we think that this is happiness. If I can get my sense pleasures satisfied, I'm happy. I go to the movie, I drink the alcohol or a soft drink or whatever it is that you like, this fruit juice. I enjoy the taste. I like that food. I want that taste. I like the smell of that bread that's baking in the oven, or I like the smell of the flowers on the altar, or whatever it is. We're trying to satisfy one of the five senses most of the time. Usually we're not satisfying the sixth sense in the way that the Buddha encourages us to satisfy the mind. The way to satisfy the mind is not the same way in terms of the enlightened or the noble way is different from the normal way. The normal way is five senses plus your imagination and your dreams. But the Buddha's way, which leads to being noble, which means to being enlightened, is not to invest in the sense world. Even Frankl, the psychiatrist, in that particular story, it was highlighted that feelings and emotions are fleeting, they're transitory, they don't last. The pursuit of happiness is grounded in the satisfaction of the five sense bases, our normal five senses. That is normally how we derive our happiness. We're playing Pokemon Go or, gambling or whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. Just look at what your five senses are doing at that time. How are they engaged with the object, whether it's Pokemon or reading a newspaper or a magazine? What is the purpose of that particular endeavour? So for the example, to provide the talk this morning, I'm reading a newspaper article that somebody had sent me, and I think, oh gosh, I'm going to read this long article. I've got other things to do. I've got things I'd like to do for myself. Now you start to see here, even with something so trivial, there's a weighing up process going on, right? On the one hand, I have to use my time to read an article which may or may not be interesting. People send me all sorts of rubbish too, right? So people send me good things, but people send me things which I go, oh, good Lord. I can feel myself dying as I'm reading this. So you're kind of making that adjustment, but you can't know until you start reading it, right? And we're pressed for time in this society. And it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. So your time is precious. So you're making choices. Every time somebody presents you with something, there's a cost. There's an opportunity cost. Now I have various opportunities. I can choose to read this, or I could choose to go maybe sit down, or I can go for a walk, which is good for my body and a bit of exercise. So here I'm weighing up my happiness versus maybe the benefit of other people. The person who sent the article to me probably will see this video. I don't think they're actually here today. They can't make it. So there's that opportunity cost that we're weighing things up. And in that one there, it's a classic example what I went through. In order to present this talk this morning, I have to give a consideration to what I'm reading. Is it beneficial? Will it help other people? Right? I might find it interesting, but it doesn't mean to say others will find it interesting. You know, you could have somebody who's into nuclear physics and the rest of you, most of you will start falling asleep. They're right into it, what electrons are up to and quarks and Planck lengths and blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, great. Maybe half of you are interested, or less than half, maybe 10%. Doesn't mean that most of you will be interested in the topic at all. So we have to make these decisions when we're giving talks. What's of benefit? What do we think will be of benefit or interesting? Right? Maybe I'm just interested in it and I don't care what you think. And that would be an example of my happiness being more important. I'm going to talk about puppies because I like puppies. But maybe a lot of you don't care about puppies. But I'm happy about puppies, and that's all that matters, right? But here, we should be weighing things up. If I want to lead a meaningful life, I would like to think that whatever comes across this microphone and goes out to you or goes out to YouTube or whatever is of benefit to somebody other than myself. If I want to be of benefit to myself and just be happy for myself, I go off and meditate somewhere in the middle of the forest and say, to hell with the world. That's where my happiness is more important than other people's happiness, right? And that's where one could say one leads a selfish life, perhaps. If you're meditating properly, however, if you're trying to erase the defilements, however, you are actually serving other people in another way. You become a great source of merit to the world because people see an example of something other than capitalism, materialism, self-interest. As the researchers pointed out, the 4 out of 10 Americans don't have any meaning or don't find any meaning in their lives. Of course, you could always read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and the meaning has been condensed into, I think, a number. Is it 42? Something like that. Or is it 46? Either way. 42, great. I read that book a long time ago. So 42. They're, of course, trivializing the idea of the meaning of life, Mr. Pratchett. And just saying that, okay, the meaning of life is 42. Of course, it's nonsense, right? But is it? Is it really that nonsensical? Is it more nonsensical than what we normally do with our day-to-day lives and how we fritter away our days, kind of in an offhand way? 42, maybe that makes about as much sense as just going to work, not knowing why you're going to work, coming home, just breathing and eating, and then pressing the repeat button the next morning. For some people, their lives are like this. There is not much of a meaning apart from just survival, like animals eating each other just to survive. Is the pursuit of happiness a part of this? So then we get the latest gadget so we can feel happy. If we've got an old gadget, we can't be happy. So we get another new gadget so we think we can be happy. But that's a self-interest thing. Well, often the people that I'm more inspired by are the ones who don't necessarily have the latest gadgets or the best houses or cars, but it just seems that their lives are devoted to something other than themselves. I would say that those kinds of lives tend to be more meaningful. They do look after themselves, yes. They're not walking around in rags, have, nothing, no coins to rub together. I'm not saying poverty is inspirational. It's not necessarily inspirational. But choosing not to lead a life of luxury and excess, leading the middle way, not being absolutely poor, not being absolutely rich, but devoting their time to things which are outside of themselves, which are of benefit to other people. Your job might involve serving other people, but you have to question yourself, am I actually doing this to serve others, or am I looking for my third yacht? Right? It doesn't matter what industry that you're in. What is your intention when you're working within that industry? Some people do something because they're impassioned by it. But you need to understand what is the reason behind that passion. Is it to serve your family or just yourself? Is it to serve your friends and relatives or just yourself? Some people work in Australia and they're from overseas, right? They're born overseas, they come to Australia to try and make an existence or a life for themselves. It's too hard back in their country of origin. And then they send back to overseas funds so that their family and their relatives can survive. There's probably people in this room who know of this, if not do it themselves, even to this point in time, even to this present moment. That's having a commitment outside of yourself. Albeit though, when it's with your family, of course, there's a bit of self-interest there. But if it's for other things like a charity cause, you're trying to set up, some sort of well in another country so that the people there can actually get pure water, clean water to drink and survive, and you don't actually know those people, and you've never visited there, and you don't care to visit there, you just want to help, then this is a bit more noble, right? It's not centered about how it impacts you directly. With your friends and family, these are people who you're deeply connected with, so you have a vested interest in making sure that they're okay. Okay? So looking after family, yes, you're looking after other beings. As a mother and a father, you're taking care of your child. Yes, you are sacrificing your time, but please don't forget who started the process. Right? The child never said, hey, I want to be born to you. And you said, oh, all right, come on dear, let's do the right thing. There's nothing in it for me. But when we want to take care of children, it's typically our children, not the neighbours. Right? Self-interest, okay? Don't kid yourself thinking you're some sort of saint because you've had a child. But the fact that you're taking care of them, you will make sacrifices in your life. And if you go beyond your family, this is even better. And the Buddha mentions this directly, that you can pursue the happiness, right? He says here, making your parents happy and pleased and properly maintain them in happiness makes wife and children slaves and workers. Now the Buddha is not encouraging slavery, just in case some of you are kind of like, getting upset by this. The Buddha is not encouraging slavery, it just was around at the time of the Buddha. Right? There's people who treat their slaves well and people who don't treat their slaves well. So the Buddha have to reinforce is not encouraging slavery at all, but just saying if you have slaves, please take care of them. And to the point where they are happy and pleased and you properly maintain them in happiness. You should think of their happiness. And this is the defining point, is that if you search for a meaning in your life, if you're looking for a meaning within your life, and your life is meaningful, it should be devoted to the happiness of others. And then the byproduct of that is your own happiness. You've got to get the order right. If you go first with the foundation, my happiness, therefore there won't be a meaning in your life because it's just the pursuit of happiness for yourself. There's nothing more than that. Happiness does not create meaning. Meaning creates happiness. That's where the dependency I was talking about comes from before. If I lead a meaningful life, the outcome of that can be self-satisfaction and happiness. But it's an outcome. It's not the cause. It's an effect which comes later down the track. Whereas if I just pursue self-happiness, it doesn't mean that my life has any meaning whatsoever. What did you do for the last 16 years of your life? I sat in my room and I played games and I was Snapchatting and Facebooking. And what else? No, that was it. Well, I felt happy. Well, also depressed because I really didn't connect with other people. It was very superficial relationships. I didn't risk anything apart from maybe a heart attack later in life because no exercise, increased chances of diabetes, etc. Eating bad food, not socially engaged with the world around me, not understanding what's actually happening out there. Disconnected, not connected. So where's the happiness then? Where's the meaningfulness? The happiness is little spikes. Meaningfulness is not little spikes. If you lead a meaningful life, it's a trajectory. It's going somewhere, right? But just happiness is like, whoop, and it's gone. Little blip. It's a blip on the radar. Meaningful is like a building that's been established, right? Happiness just, poof, gone. Fleeting, gone. Here it comes. Oh, it's gone. Chocolate cake. Oh, now it's finished. Now I have to search for another chocolate cake, right? But not straight away. I feel sick. So it doesn't last. So I have to find happiness somewhere else. But meaningfulness might be being the baker, not looking to make a big profit from the cake, wants to support his family or her family, but actually takes pride in the fact that they're providing something which allows other people to survive. They do care about the fact that other people find the cake or the bread sustaining and it tastes well as, that's a bonus, right? But they're actually doing something for others which is of benefit to others as well. They're a part of the community. They're looking after the community in their own way. They might give to poor people outside. They don't just throw the bread in the bin. They find poor people, they give their leftovers, the products that they don't sell, about to go off, not yet off, but about to go off. They find some meaningful way to attribute their wealth and their success and their produce to the benefit of others. How many of us work in environments like that? I don't say that you have to be a baker, right? But you can find in your workplace, I'm pretty sure you can find it if you look hard enough. If meaningfulness is the foundation, then you can find ways and means for happiness for other people to arise. Your job might be to be a medical professional. Again, your intention might be just to have a third yacht, right? Some people will go into medicine with that idea. Some people will go into medicine thinking, I just want to help people. Some people just like, I like biology, I think it's interesting, right? There's going to be a variety and a mixture of reasons why anybody goes into any profession. You can't point the finger and say this person's like that simply because they're in that job. That's a supposition. You don't know their intention. Maybe these people are overseas curing blind people, Fred Hollows style, right? Attributing their knowledge and their experience to the assistance of other beings. Maybe that's their focus, but you don't know until you actually know that person all that well. And usually things are not one-sided. Even somebody who's maybe self-centered occasionally will make a donation to something here and there. Doesn't matter what industry. Even that one moment is something that should be praised because they're letting go. Their giving is an act of generosity. And you'll notice in here when the Buddha is talking about how do you go about the four things which are wished for, most of the things he's talking about is about other people. Your parents, slaves, workers, children are making provisions against losses, but who's that? When you get an insurance, that's insurance. Making provision against losses is buying an insurance policy or saving money for a rainy day. That's an insurance policy, okay? The Buddha says that's fine. Even a noble disciple, right? We're not talking about normal people. We're talking about people as stream enterers and beyond. People who have already gotten to the first stage of enlightenment should take out an insurance policy or should save their funds or whatever so that the rainy day is provided for. Okay? In case kings, well, kings you should say the Australian government. Okay? Taxation office particularly. Right? Fire, flood, kings and thieves. We wouldn't want to say the ATO are thieves. Some might, especially libertarians perhaps. Displeasing heirs, you know, the children who want to take the money away from you before you die. Do we really have to wait for the will? Come on. Buy me my house now and give me a Porsche. So the kids will also try to take. But the Buddha is saying here it's okay to kind of take that into consideration, to prepare for those things. It is reasonable because you're still providing for other people, those other people being the family members, okay? You're still taking your responsibilities to take care of them into consideration. So that's an important thing to do. Somebody's phone's ringing. It's an important call. Make sure you take care of your family, okay? Yes, I'm coming home, I'll bring some bread. And here, generosity is another factor as well. An uplifting offering of alms, an offering which is heavenly, resulting in happiness. The Buddha is talking a lot about happiness here, but But you note that the happiness is not the self-centered happiness. The happiness is the happiness of others, the slaves, the parents, the children, right? The people in your community, the monks, never forget the monks, right? Notice I've got to reinforce here, offering of alms, that is heavenly, okay? Heaven. It's not ordinary, heavenly, right? Okay, resulting in happiness conducive to heaven. When you do things for others and you see that they're happy, how do you feel? You feel happy. You don't want to be the grandfather who, gives his grandson a pair of socks at Christmas. I mean, that would have worked 60 years ago when people didn't have socks, right? But in this society, most people can get socks if they want them. Even poor people, even a homeless people can find socks somewhere. It's not a hard to get kind of item, all right? So we put a bit of thoughtfulness into what we want to give to people. We want to make it special. And when we go through that effort, we do our research, we find out what they want, we give that to them, we see that they're happy, we feel happy. Our happiness is based upon their happiness. And our motivation underneath that is to serve another person. The foundation isn't, I want to feel happy, so I'm going to give a gift so I can feel happy. That's not the right motivation. The right motivation is, I just enjoy giving. I want to give. I want to serve. I want to help. And then from that comes the happiness. It's a byproduct. It's not what we're seeking out. It's not, I want to feel happy, therefore I'm going to go into a homeless hostel and provide everybody with jumpers for winter. It's not the right way of going about it. When people come and ask, they're suffering from depression, I will encourage them to do more social work. Not serving your family. Serving your family is not social work, right? Serving your friends is not social work. But going outside of your immediate base of contacts just to help some strangers somewhere with something which is you feel important, you feel is important, you feel you can contribute towards and have a meaningful contribution, okay? Meaningful, not happy contribution. A happy contribution is I'm playing an online game and I'm with a team of other people playing the same. We're all on the same side and we beat the opposition. We all feel happy. But it's not particularly meaningful. You turn the computer off, that team is gone, it's dissolved. The game is finished. And what are you left with? Memories of feelings. There's no real meaning there. There's no real purpose, right? Just your own personal entertainment and satisfaction. That's contrasted to going out and helping another person with something. It's very different. And the happiness comes later, right? The benefits also can come later. Sometimes you don't see the benefit of what you're doing. I have to be careful not to mention names. I met somebody at a monastery elsewhere, and this person had psychiatric issues. And I know that it's like a paranoia-based mental health problem. And the person said, oh, look, there's people out there in the forest. They want to kill me. They got guns. I said, really? Yeah, they're right out there. I go, oh, here we go. I'm starting to weigh things up, right? All right, let's entertain this for a little while. I didn't say that to him, right? Okay, let's go. Just open the curtains and you show me where you think that they're hiding. So he shows me where, there's nobody out there, of course, right? So I look, but I take the time to consider his fear to be legitimate. At least it is for him, not so much for me. Okay. So I'm looking, there's nobody out there. And I said to him, I can't see anybody. Maybe they've gone away. I'm not saying you're crazy, right? That would be for my happiness, but and it won't be for his happiness, and it's not actually meaningful. So, okay, but for him, this is a meaningful thing. It's a thing that's so meaningful, it creates fear for him. It paralyzes him. Okay, I can't see anybody. Maybe they've gone away. Maybe just seeing other people around here, they've lost their courage and they've gone off. Oh, okay, maybe. Of course, in his mind, I don't think he would let go of it that quickly, right? But I try to placate him and bring some sense of ease, non-fear to his life. So at that point there, he kind of backed away from a bit. I hung around for a little while, then went back to my hut. Fast forwarding 6 years later, a letter turns up to here, and it's from this gentleman. And I didn't get to read the letter. Somebody else opened the letter, and he said, do you have this particular monk by this name here? I wanted to get in contact with him because so many years ago I met him at this monastery, and I was struggling at that time, and more recently I was struggling. I was struggling to the point I decided to kill myself. I wanted to kill myself. And before I killed myself, I just started to think of all the people who mattered to me in my life, or who had kindness to me. And this monk came up in my memory. And so as a result of that, I didn't take my life. I didn't go through with it. I didn't do the suicide. So this is an example of something where you don't think what you're doing may be all that significant. It's not a big thing. I didn't hang a plaque on a wall. We didn't cut a ribbon, right? He didn't get a degree on stage. He wasn't getting married. These aren't the things which you will remember. These aren't the meaningful things in your life. Not those kinds of things. It's those things which you don't actually think about too much, and yet has a profound impact on other people's lives, including your own. So never take it for granted. Those small acts of kindness where you go out of your way to help somebody else, those small acts of kindness and the kind of impact that it can have on their lives, you just don't know. And sometimes you don't see, and you'll never hear it. In this occasion, I actually got a letter. Well, not directed to me, it was directed to the BSV, trying to find me, right? To trying to connect and say, hey, this is what happened. I'd be none the wiser, absolutely none the wiser. Just met Joe Bloggs 6 years ago, just saying, oh, okay, yeah. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought, yeah, okay, the guy's a bit crazy. All right, so what can I do? Try to take a bit of fear out of the equation. And that's about as much. I can't cure a person. I can't touch them and say, you're cured now. I'd do doctors out of a job. Next, what have you got? Such as, okay, next. I've got to wash my hands, sorry, hang on. Get the sanitizer out. But our natural inclination, if we have a meaningful life, we have a direction. If we are just looking for a happy life, we go everywhere. The tongue is going everywhere. The eye is going everywhere. The ears are going everywhere. A sense of touch is going everywhere. But when we have a meaningful life, our mind has a trajectory. It has a path. It has a direction. And it doesn't mean to say that it's fixed. When we're looking at our family and friends, that things are fixed. They're not fixed things. But a meaningful life can encompass other things more than oneself. It's expansive. It's inclusive. It doesn't push things away. It tends to draw things towards you. And that's why it's stressful, because there's a responsibility involved. If you don't want a stressful life, just look after yourself. But you won't feel any meaning in your life. And there will be nothing to give you any purpose for going on. If you want to end your life, it's easy. Find that your life is meaningless. People with a meaningless life have a greater chance of killing themselves. People with a purpose in life, or a meaning in their life, have a trajectory. They've got somewhere to go, as Frankl was also saying. When you've got something to move towards, or somebody who's looking out for you, or you want to look out for them, you've got a purpose. It's enough. It's enough of a meaning to keep going. And sometimes it's just that little bit which makes that difference. So be that for yourself. Be the lighthouse for yourself. Be the lighthouse for other people. And then you'll be in a meaningful situation. You'll have a meaningful life. Never underestimate your impact on other people and yourself. And if we live with more people around us who are like this, we'll have also a happy life, because we're making that contribution to others. We feel happy too. They feel happy because they're contributing towards us. Get the order right. Meaning has to be there. Meaningful life, and then the real happiness will come. That is my talk for this morning on the difference between a meaningful and a happy life. I hope that there's something of benefit to you, and open up for any questions that there may be. There's a microphone here. Are there any questions? Fantastic. Comprehensive. Okay, yes, if we can get the microphone up there. Thanks.
I speak loud, that's okay.
You can speak loud, but people in video land won't hear you. Yes, they're in Germany or America or something.
Can concentrating just on meaning in life and forgetting about oneself lead to stress and exhaustion?
Can just focusing upon oneself lead to
No, can focusing on meaning,
just the meaning?
just forgetting to look after yourself lead to stress and exhaustion?
If you do not take care of yourself, yeah, if you're finding your life is meaningful only through the eyes of other people, it's also unbalanced. As I was saying before about selfishness, there is a selfishness which is wise, and then there's self-centeredness, okay? But then there's also people who focus solely upon other people, okay? So I didn't mention that before. But if you focus solely on other people, what is the purpose of that? What is the reason? Why are you doing that? It's important to understand this is a being. That is a being. Both are worthy of support. Both would want to be happy. Both would want to have meaningful lives. Neglecting this in exchange for the happiness of that, this is not sensible. This is not the middle way, and it's an extreme view. Only that, not this, or only this, not that. They're both extremes. So we need to come more into the center. If I can help here, I help here. If I can help here, I also help here. I don't neglect this. If this body fails because I don't take care of it, how can it help another? It can't. The misery of this, or the pain and suffering of this, doesn't necessarily mean the happiness for the other. It means usually I cannot help another if this is going through too much pain and suffering. Does that make sense? Does it answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
Just behind you there.
Hi, Bhante. So there are some people, I understand that it's good to have meaning in life because it gives you a goal to work towards. But there are some people who feel that, why do I need to have that? I can just focus on my happiness, that's all I need. And, I'm happy with that, it's simple. As long as I'm not causing harm to other people, I'm just happy pursuing my day-to-day bits of happiness, little spikes. And some people say that they don't, why do you need to have all these big meaning and goals? So what would you say to such people?
Or may you be happy. If they think that the happiness will come from those kinds of things, my sole function in life is not to convert other people. A Buddhist monk, there's no part of his job criteria says conversion. Wrong religion, right? So whether you accept or don't accept, this is just another view. It's just another opinion. If your life seems meaningful or happy, as it is, and I'm not here to change your mind, right? If somebody says that they feel happy, well, maybe they are happy, but does that mean that their life will equate to much? That's another question. Even if they feel that they're happy, it doesn't mean that their life is meaningful. Again, we need to be clear about the difference between those two things. Somebody could lead a meaningful life and be quite stressed. I mean, they may be like the president of a country or something. They may be absolutely miserable. They can't sleep all night because there's always a Cuban Missile Crisis, Vietnam's got flooding, blah, blah, blah. What's your response? What's your response? What's your response? There's no end to responses in the world. And people in those positions, like, see Barack Obama, right, starts off with black hair, now is like, Santa Claus, right? It's just white, right? And I see it also for myself, Hair at a certain stage, take on the project, set up a monastery, went from black to grey. It's actually good. I'll let it grow out like this. I go, geez, I'm getting old and stressed, right? But in a way that comes with the territory. If you want to lead a meaningful life, you are going to encounter situations of opposition, situations of difficulty, situations of moral choice and ethics, and that's challenging. If you want to lead a happy life, you don't bother with anything. Oh, you're having difficulty. Sucks to be you. Just keep walking along. I'm happy. You're not. That's your problem, right? Well, you don't stress out about other people when you're in that situation. You just do your power walk every morning. You walk past the dying person, the sick person, the elderly person. There's no sign. There's no Devadatta there. There's no Devaduta, I should say. It's like divine messengers. The person just seeking their own happiness just walks straight past the sick person. Oh, hey, looks like you're in trouble. See ya. Or they walk over the dead body. Oh, geez, that's inconvenient. You're interfering with my happiness. But it's not meaningful. What does their life amount to? When you get to their funeral, dearly departed, we are gathered here today to celebrate the life of, who cares? Joe blogs. Joe was happy for himself. I'm sorry, I'm talking to nobody. Nobody's here. Why would you turn up to Joe Blogg's funeral? He achieved nothing in his life except for his own happiness, self-centeredness. You wouldn't turn up to his funeral. He had no impact on other people. He was a consumer. He breathed. If anything, he deprived others of oxygen. That was his contribution to society. Greenhouse emissions and oxygen reduction. Do you people in history, meet Jeff, and please don't take this wrong, he was a florist, and that was his contribution to life. He worked. That's it. But then you could meet Jane. She was a florist. She gave a lot of flowers to people at cemetery whose graves they didn't have any flowers. They were unattended. She would clean them up, present flowers to those sites, the stones and things in memory of those people. And when the families come there, they feel happy to see that the site has been maintained. Somebody takes care of their, loved ones, stones and things like this. There's a difference. There's a different feel. People care about Jane, the first guy. Who cares? Self-interest. He made money for himself. Wow, that's amazing. Unique. Self-interested person saves money. Do you ever see that on the front of the newspaper? Rich person acquires more wealth. Who cares? Nobody cares about that. At the end, nobody remembers it either.
I was just wondering that with this meaning in life where people remember you for the good things, why do we glorify it so much as well?
I think because we make investments in other people during our lives and we like to see a return on the investment. We've backed a good horse. It's part of human psychology. Nobody wants to back the losing horse. You don't go to the Melbourne Cup. I've got the losing ticket. I backed the wrong horse. Nobody does that, right? We all like to back winners. We like to back the right Prime Minister who gets elected. Who did you vote for? Well, they didn't get elected. My Prime Minister got elected, right? We take pride in being right, so it's pride. Also, our own fragility in our lives too, because when we see another person who dies, that's also me. I could be that person, right? We have that kind of connection at that point where that could be me. Actually, it will be me. And that realization sometimes reminds us, I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know when I'm going to die, but I would like to be well known and well remembered just like this person. We want to connect with it in that way as well.
Does it come about from a bit of greed as well? Like you want some fame, you want some recognition.
Sure.
So it's not exactly 100% wholesome.
No. But if you think about it in terms of I've done good things more than I've done bad things for other people and myself, that's actually a point of wholesomeness. It's actually goodness. Yeah, it's not wanting to be known as the person who's done thousands of things. That's not the right intention. But having lived a life where you feel satisfied, I've done so much for others. I've done so much for my family, for myself. I can be content. I can die with peace. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, down the front here, if we can get the microphone down the front. There we go.
I would have got up, but my foot's gone to sleep, and I would have lived down there with my phone.
Well, may you be happy.
I was just, something I was thinking about this week as well was when the Buddha talks about right livelihood.
Mm.
And I was thinking, I've heard things, about, don't sell intoxicants, don't be a weapons dealer, this kind of stuff. But I was thinking, and maybe there is stuff that's been said, but I was thinking, in terms of this meaning, that right livelihood, we hear this more and more, and you're even intimating today in terms of your job, that what you do is meaningful, that what you do is beyond just not doing the bad things, but actually seeking out the good things and making the life. And I think in that, that leads, there's something there that's leading us to a reduction, if not a end of suffering, of having the right job. What do you think about that?
I think at the end of the day you have to live with yourself, and this is the most important part. It's your mind is your business. So if you consider your mind as your business, how do you want to treat your business? What kind of clientele do you want? What kind of people do you allow into your life, in other words? What kind of thoughts do you allow into your life? And what ones should remain? Which ones should be escorted out as quickly as possible? Wholesome thoughts should come and should remain. That's great. Unwholesome thoughts come. They shouldn't remain. You should try to extinguish it and remove them because they're not helpful or beneficial. You see yourself getting into a process of addiction, a thought based upon addiction and thought based upon craving. You should escort those thoughts out because it's like inviting a bunch of bikies, like let's say the Hells Angels, wanting to come in to your house. Do you just say, oh yeah, come in, and oh, we plan to trash your house. We are going to trash your house. Yeah, sure, come on in. I know what you like. Yeah, come on in, no problem. Would you do that? How many people would voluntarily invite people into their house to trash their place? I'm not saying Hells Angels do that. All right? Would you do that? Would you entertain those thoughts which are destructive, knowing that they're destructive? Would you increase them, allow them to multiply? So when you're looking at anything in your life, just see, is this wholesome or unwholesome? When you look at right livelihood, it's about, at the end of the day, can you live with yourself? It's not about others. It's about, can you live with yourself? Having decided to do this and act in this way, do I think it's moral? Do I think it's good? It's for the benefit of others? Selling weapons is never for the benefit of others. What are you going to do with this? Shove it in a display case? All 400 rounds of those bullets in a display case? Really? I think you're going to kill people or animals with it. Either way, I don't think it's for their benefit. Alcohol is not for the benefit of other beings. It creates delusion and potentially addiction. I mean, I don't make this stuff up. Science will tell you this, right? Anything that's particularly addictive, there's a chance that the person's life will be ruined and their family. It's not marijuana which causes problems in Australia. It's alcohol. Try and ban that. Good luck. There's vested interests, big business. You can't ban alcohol. People make it in their backyards. I say, great. You make it in your backyard. You make your little factory in your backyard. That's your problem, not my problem. You make it easy to access. Of course, it makes it. If we sold guns like we sold alcohol, this place would be a nightmare. You got 14-year-old kids running down the streets with machine guns. If it's so easy to get alcohol, it'd be so easy to get guns too. So you don't see, newspapers, man kills person under influence of marijuana. Why? Marijuana, it's a depressant. You don't want to do anything. Yeah, man, yeah. Hey, if you're not careful, I'll share my weed with you, I don't think people having a nightclub frenzied marijuana attack, right? But we give marijuana is a drug, it's the war on drugs, all this kind of stuff. And I'm not pro-marijuana. I've never smoked the stuff. I don't need to. Somebody says, it's potentially addictive, like a scientist or something. I go, yeah, okay, potentially addictive. I won't take it. Why? I have a bit of faith in science. Not complete. Enough. They say there's gravity. I kind of agree with them, right? So if they say that this drug is potentially addictive, well then, okay, I'll listen to that. I'll consider it. I don't need it to survive. I've lived all my life without marijuana. Probably will live another day without it. Good chance. I've tried alcohol. It was a legal drug. It still is a legal drug in Australia. As a layperson, not as a monk. All right? Just got to clarify that. And all I can see from that is the potential for addiction, the potential to use that as a way of avoiding one's problems in life. Not actually facing them, but avoiding problems. Distraction. Not extraction, distraction. You don't extract yourself out of a problem by using drugs. You just get distracted. The problem is still there. You haven't solved it. So when we talk about right livelihood, what we're talking about is how I relate with my own mind. What kind of relationship is there? Because I've got to live with that for the rest of this life and the next life as well. And the life after that. But if you're only worried about this particular life, it's still a problem. Treat your mind like you would like to treat your backyard. Is it going to be overgrown with weeds? unused car bodies from 1960 something? Or is it going to be clean, a place that's delightful for people to come close to or to be a part of or to be in? That's up to us to decide. Microphone down there, please. I hope that answers your question, or at least addresses some of the concerns. There you go.
Bhante, so with the happy life versus the meaningful life sounds like obviously it gives your life purpose and others benefit. But if I'm just living the temporarily happy life, seeking sense pleasures, what's the kind of negative consequence of that? Because it sounds good in, when you explain it, it's like no stress, just happy. But there's definitely a downside, right? And
Yeah.
what would be that?
Just leading a happy life, yes.
Yeah.
Well, like I suppose I also hinted upon, when it's coming close to death, nobody will know you. You could go to a hospital, nobody cares, because you actually haven't engaged in other people's lives in a significant way. There's no investment. You've got to think of people like banks. The more you put into them, the more of a return you can get, unless they go bankrupt, right? Bankrupt is death or severe illness or sickness or injury or something like that. It's hard for them to give back in some ways. But yeah, look, people are like banks. You invest. The more you put into another person in terms of time, emotional response or investment, then there will be a return, which is significant. But people who are self-centered, just looking for their own happiness, don't contribute to society. They don't contribute much to other people's lives, if anything at all. There's no investments being made. So therefore, there's no return. So the happy life also means usually depression, because all you're doing is seeking happiness. It means when you're not happy, the only other significant thing in your life is to find more happiness. And so sometimes you can't always get that happiness. Sometimes it's dependent upon money, it's dependent on where you're located, whether there's a war or not, or whether your family's going through any emotional issues. If your happiness is most important, you just keep jumping like a flea from dog to dog looking for the best blood. Not realizing actually it's always going to be dog blood. Right? That's the problem. Rather than seeing actually it's the process of biting which is the issue. Why do I need to bite for blood? Actually, I'm going to try and help the dog by not landing anywhere behind its ear because, hard to scratch. Right? If we're having a meaningful life as a flea, it's going to be difficult, I think. I'm trying to think of the best thing a flea can do is probably not go to areas where they can't be scratched off. Flea needs to eat as well. Okay? But I'm not saying fleas have that level of intelligence, right? I'm just using a simile. So we're trying to place ourselves in situations where we're not a burden on society. That doesn't mean if you're partially sick that you kill yourself or something like this, all right, or you're partially irritated. If you don't have a meaningful life, you are more inclined to depression and you are more inclined to kill yourself. Because there is no network outside of you. This is the network. And if I'm just seeking happiness for myself, it's here. It's not about, my connection to other beings does not cause any happiness for me whatsoever. Of course, when you connect with others, you introduce stress. It's part of the equation. Stress comes with the return of happiness as well. I work hard and that's a stress. But the reward for that is money going into your bank account at the end of the week. Okay? It's called work for a reason. It's not like, what are you doing? I'm going to happiness today. Really? What do you do with happiness? Oh, I just turn up. They pay me a lot of money. I don't have to do it. What do you have to do? Nothing. Even monks don't do nothing. Right? You think monks just do nothing? They sit at the tree. No. Not even at the time of the Buddha did monks do nothing. It's very hard to do nothing. Right? The people who really do nothing get enlightened. Okay, so we're talking about a small subset here, folks. So to really disengage and to do nothing is exceptionally hard. And do nothing means it's a mental action. Not to get involved in things, including oneself. Doing nothing, that is very hard. We create this illusion of self and we start doing things for it, whether externally or internally. To really do nothing means not to invest in those processes heavily. Enough to survive, yes. Collect alms on the alms round, go back. But the contract is people give us alms not so we can sit in the forest and sleep all day. That's actually doing something. That's not doing nothing. That's doing something. You're sleeping. You're wasting time. You know, that's not practice. Practice is actually seeing what's happening in your mind and eradicating the defilements. If you think a monk, his job, or her job if she's a nun, is to go to the forest, just sit around and just laze around, wasting time, that's not what you're supporting, not as a Buddhist supporter. What you're supporting is the elimination of the defilements and the struggle, the fight, the internal fight for that person to keep that going, to keep eradicating, to keep cleaning. It's a cleaning job, right? We're glorified cleaners. We don't have a vacuum, but we do have the high pressure cleaner for the mind. Sometimes it doesn't work all that well. Sometimes it requires more than one pass to clean that stubborn mould off, right? But that's our job, is to clean the mind, our mind, not your mind. But through this process of cleaning the mind, then you also get to see an example of what a cleaner mind looks like, ideally. You're making an investment to witness a cleaner mind, which can change and transform your mind. Does that make sense? Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, just there, yeah.
Okay, how do you explain being in the present moment and leading a meaningful life? Because in the article, I think that having a happy life connects with having a present moment or being in the present moment as well. So it's a bit confusing. So if you can explain it a bit further.
Yeah, there was mention in the article about the present moment. Here we go. Thinking beyond the present moment into the past or future was a sign of the relatively meaningful but unhappy life. The research is right. Happiness is not generally found in contemplating the past or the future. This is true. Happiness is about getting things now, right? Being the demanding child. I want it now, and start screaming until you get what you want now. That's happiness. It's not meaningful, right? Immediate sense-based satisfaction doesn't make it meaningful. Whether I like the smell of a flower or not, it's not really meaningful by itself. It's just satisfying my senses, the happiness that comes from sense-based experiences, right? And satisfying those memories from the past of having those experiences and wanting them again. That's usually what we're doing day to day, is trying to recreate memories of happiness, right? It's like chasing a ghost from the past and trying to bring it back into the present. So it's not meaningful. It's just a pursuit of temporary happiness. And by itself is just self-absorbed. So here, meaning on the other hand is enduring. It connects the past to the present to the future, thinking beyond the present moment.
Aren't we encouraged to be in the present moment? So if we have to lead that meaningful life, so then do we actually get away from being in the present moment as well?
Being a psychiatrist's view here is not necessarily in line with Dhamma all the time, okay? So when the Buddha is talking about the present moment, that means not seeking something in the present moment. You're not craving. Craving is no part of the Buddha's teaching. Wanting something in the present moment is bound up with the idea of happiness. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So in the present moment, actually, it's not about seeking out happiness. You're not in the present moment if you're seeking for the future to bring into the present. That's craving. Craving is suffering. If you're content with how things are in the present, that's different. But that's the search. People looking for happiness are searching. They're not content with what they have. They're looking to satisfy the sense bases again.